Okay, hello everyone. This is Pranav Fadke. I'm an AWS Academy accredited instructor. I've been taking trainings on AWS for the last 4 to 5 years in several corporate batches. I've also trained corporates, I've trained students, I've helped a lot of people along with their journey for the AWS certification. What do we mean by cloud computing? Exactly what is the buzzword with cloud computing? And why everybody is actually gearing towards AWS nowadays. What is the buzz with AWS? We're going to cover that. Also, if possible, I'll quickly go to the console. I will try to show you a small demonstration on how easy it is to actually get started with AWS. Then I'll talk a bit about the certification, and then we'll have the FAQs at the last part. So we'll first of all understand what do we mean by cloud computing. So cloud computing means again on demand resources. That means whenever you want to have different kinds of resources, let us just take a simple example. Let's say you have a local server. That means you have your computer on which you want to perform any kind of task. Now if that task is a very powerful compute processing task, you might run out of enough capacity, so for that you require a powerful server. So instead of you yourself purchasing a server, again, what is a server? It's a computer which runs 24/7 and it serves some kind of files. So instead of going to that, you can actually just rent out the server from someone else. That is where AWS comes into picture. So with cloud computing, I can actually purchase someone else's server whenever I want. That is on demand. So whenever you want, you can actually go for these services. It is IT resources. That means you get compute. Now, one of you told me that you are actually working in a storage based company. Yes, you can even purchase storage from AWS. That means you can store your data on the cloud as well. Then you can even host your applications. So basically your applications can completely hosted in the cloud as well, and it's pay as you go. That means I do not need to pay anything upfront. Whenever I start using the services, at the end of the month I have to pay the bill. So that is again one more attractive thing, or that is an advantage of cloud computing, where you do not need to make an upfront investment. Definitely depending on the provider that you're going with, maybe with AWS, maybe with Google Cloud Platform, you might need to go in and you might need to put in your credit card, but don't worry, it will be not charged immediately. That means you will be billed at the end of the month or based on the cycle that the cloud provider will give you. You might also get few kind of credits for the free trial and something like that as well. It is accessible online. That means you can access it from anywhere. You just need a strong internet connection. So that's in a nutshell about cloud computing. So again, how might cloud computing address some of the issues that you are facing in the traditional computing model? So up until now, if you're all familiar with, everybody used to actually go in and develop their own web servers. That means earlier, few years back, if you had to create your own web server, you would buy a computer, set up some kind of server on it, and then start using it. Then as your requirements grew, you need to provision more capacity. You need to actually hire people to handle all of that. That is where a server, a data center, all of that thing comes into picture. So we're trying to eliminate all of that with cloud computing. So with cloud computing, you can actually set up a low cost system. Why? Because I do not have to put in or purchase a server. Again, I'm just using a ready-made server. I'm only paying for it on, let's say, a per hour costing or something like that. It's elastic. That means I do not need to actually worry about the hardware. I can actually increase the capacity on the go as well. Then it is flexible. That means I can use it any way that I want. So what do I mean by flexible? That means I have a wide range of services to choose from. So depending on my requirement, I can go for any number of services. That is something called as flexibility. And then we have security. Why? Because since you're using someone else's data center, that guy or that provider will make sure that he has the most secure system. Again, why? Because if it is not secure, nobody will obviously use it. So people will not use the system if it is not secure. So they need to ensure that they have the proper security in place from their infrastructure perspective. So now we'll take a look at what is cloud versus on-premises. So with cloud, as I've already told you, there is no upfront investment as such requirement. That means there is no commitment as such requirement. I can just start with that and I can stop it at any point of time. With on-premises, there is a large initial purchase that you need to make. So you need to put in a certain amount of money beginning with. Why? Because I have to set up my server. Let's say you have to host any kind of application, any kind of website, web server, anything So for that, you'll require a powerful computer, and that is where the payment will come into picture. So I have to pay a certain amount of money. That is where large initial purchase comes into picture. Then as I go along, the cost will actually be reduced in cloud. Why? Because let us say that you provision an 8 GB memory server. I do that in the cloud. In the next month, probably I don't want that. I can just reduce that to 4 GB. I can downsize to 4 GB with just one click. That means I can click on right click and decrease size to 4 GB. I can simply go to that size as well. That is low ongoing cost. But in on premises, I have to pay for the labor. That means again, not everything can be handled by me. Not all of the servers, not everything can be managed by me. The patches, whatever the patches are there, the upgrade cycles, everything have to be taken care of me. So I basically have to manage everything. Then in the cloud, I can actually innovate. That means I can go for a different mix of services. I can go for a different options available in the cloud. Whereas in on premises, I have to pay a significant amount in systems administration. Then the cloud talks about flexible capacity. That means I can increase or decrease the capacity on the go. Now why is this possible? This is possible because you are offloading it to someone else. Since I'm giving this task to the AWS or any kind of cloud provider, he has the responsibility of giving me the required capacity, that is flexible capacity. Whereas on premises, you will have a fixed capacity. Let's say you have purchased a 32 GB memory server, you are fixed with that. I cannot immediately increase or downsize that. I need to do a certain kind of a cycle called as a procurement cycle. Again, guys, if anybody of you wants to stop me, if anybody wants to point out anything, definitely go on the mic and speak that out, or you can definitely put in the chat section. I believe Venkat will have a look over that and let me know definitely. So when it comes to procurement, what do I mean by procurement? So in the AWS, so in the on premises, sorry, whenever you have, let's say, a 4 GB server, I want to increase it to 8 GB. I have to physically take out the RAM, go to the store, actually purchase a new RAM, and then replace it with my current thing. That means I have to check whether it is compatible with my existing infra, existing motherboard, and then I have to replace it. That is a procurement and setup that is required. Now in the cloud, there is something called as speed and agility. Why? Because again, I am just offloading it to AWS. So I'm just giving this task over to Amazon Web Services or any cloud provider. So it is his responsibility to give me the hardware that I require, give me the infra that I require, and uh, it's his responsibility to give me a stable connection. That means I should always be able to access the services on the internet. It is his responsibility from his perspective. So his site never going down is basically his responsibility. That is the data center or the provider's responsibility. Then when it comes to reach on demand with the cloud, I can have a global reach on demand. What do I mean by that? So sitting here, I can provision a server anywhere in any part of the world. Now, why is that required? Let's say, let's have an example. If my end users are based in US or America, it will make sense that I actually provision a server near them so that they get the access quickly. So in that case, I can just sit here and provision a server in North Virginia or California so that my actually end users in America or US are able to quickly access that without any kind of issues. But in on premises, there is a limit of geographic region. So where all you can actually provision a server. There is a limitation with that when it comes to on premises. I might have a data center in only 2 or 3 areas, but in the cloud, you can actually reach on demand as well. That means there is a certain global reach on demand that I can actually achieve. So now whatever we see today or whatever you have seen in today's life, a lot of applications, everybody provides you different kinds of cloud computing models. That means whatever applications that you deal with in the real life, you all actually go with these kind of models. That means the different types of models. What are the
Hi,
models?
Pawan. Can I pause you here for a second?
Sure,
Okay, you just mentioned that suppose my users are in suppose for US, UK, or any other region. So then the data center or the data where it will be stored will be basically nearer to them, so that the connectivity and latency is faster, right?
correct. Yeah,
But for example, if I take Corsac as a global brand, okay. So they might have customers. Suppose CoreStack provides uh, cloud computing for its students or for its uh, participants. Then suppose, for example, I need there are different people might join in from different part of or the world, right? So
Correct.
then at that scenario, how latency will take into picture, or
Okay.
the reach out to the uh, application or the reach out to the servers will be faster.
Okay, so there are two concepts here that you are saying. So basically, what I can do, I can go with two concepts. Either I can create multiple web servers spread up across the entire world. That means, let's take an example of Amazon.com. So what Amazon.com has done, they have their servers spread up across the entire world. So depending on from where people are accessing, they automatically go to their nearest server. So for that, they can have a Route 53 or a DNS service, which will automatically take them to the nearest server. That is one option that you have. You can provision your multiple servers across the entire world. Or the second option that you have is use a service called a CDN or a CloudFront. So basically, whenever you watch YouTube actually does. Why does YouTube load very faster? Because there is a CDN or a content delivery network at the back end, which will serve the content faster to you. So CDN does what? A CDN nothing but copies your data across the entire world. You do not have to create a server across the entire world. You will still have a server in one location only. But the CDN service will actually copy the data across the entire world, and it will speedily give your end users the access to your data. So that is something that you can use to eliminate that problem. Am I clear?
Yeah. And CDN is a service which is provided by the cloud itself, right?
Yes. So CDN is
Okay.
basically a service in AWS. We have a CloudFront as a service, and basically in Google you have Google CDN for that. Also, different providers have different CDNs which can
Different.
do that
Yeah.
for you.
Okay. Fine.
Okay,
Thanks a lot for explaining it.
Pranav, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, no problem.
What is the difference between AWS services with compared to Google Cloud or Azure or any other cloud services? How is it more superior? How is it more in demand? Why is it more
Uh,
in demand?
Okay, to answer your question, I have that on the slides. Let me just go through the next couple of slides. We'll go through
Sure.
that, and then at the end, even if you're not satisfied, definitely ask me again. I will solve that query again.
Okay. Another one. Do you need to have a cloud practitioner certifications before we go to the solutions architect, or you can go directly to solutions architect certification?
No, if you actually have some kind of IT experience, or if you have some kind of basic knowledge of IT concepts, I would suggest directly going to the solutions architect rather than actually starting with the cloud practitioner, because it's just an introductory level for people who are entirely new to AWS or do not know anything about IT concepts as well.
Okay, so it's not a mandate that you should have a cloud practitioner
Definitely
certificate.
not in AWS. Right now, there is no mandatory certification. That means you can actually go in and appear for any of the certification as well.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. For rest of the people, again, I will definitely have queries at the end. Let me just go. We have a few slides. Let me just complete with that. Then I'll take the queries at the end. So now let me talk about the cloud computing model. So basically there are three models that are popular that you see in today's world. That is software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. You all might have heard about these models somewhere in real life. So what is SaaS or software as a service? So whatever applications are there, like Netflix and Hotstar. Netflix is there, Hotstar is there, your Gmail is there, Adobe Photoshop is there, even Office is offered as an online service nowadays. So basically, these are nothing but completely hosted on the cloud. That means with SaaS or software, your software is basically all in cloud. It is completely hosted in the cloud. You as an end user can only access what your provider gives you. That means whatever your provider gives you, you can only access that and nothing else. Rest of the everything is abstracted to you. So you as an end user, you do not have access to any of the cloud configuration. That means on Netflix, I can only play the videos. I can only do that. When it comes to Hotstar, that is the same thing. For Gmail, you can only access your mail. So basically, the software is given to you just as a service, and you probably pay for it on like a subscription model, or you basically just use those services. Now for Gmail, there is no as such cost, but depending on the service, you will be billed for that accordingly, maybe in a subscription model or maybe in some kind of other way as well. The second thing that is written here is platform as a service. So most of your cloud providers, different cloud providers actually give these services, that is a PaaS service or platform as a service. You might have heard about the smart speaker Alexa, that is Amazon speaker. That is actually a PaaS, that has a PaaS model at the back end. So in that, what happens is whenever you tell it, let's say Alexa, play me a song. I'm sorry if anybody this has triggered anybody's Alexa, but if I just say play me a song, so what happens at the back end? It will run a function for you. So it will just run that function, it will run that code and will give you the output. So under platform as a service, you just upload your code and the provider or the service will give you the output. That is PaaS. And the last one is the complete bouquet or the complete thing for you. That is called as infrastructure as a service, where everything is given out to you as a service and you can use it any way that you want. So popular examples of IaaS are AWS, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform. All of these are nothing but popular IaaS or infrastructure as a service models. When it comes to PaaS, again, a lot of different things are there, like you have Elastic Beanstalk, which is there one of the service in AWS. You have Lambda, which is another service. For Google, you have Google App Engine, which is like a platform as service where you can just upload your code and you can get the output. So basically these are the different ways on how you can actually leverage cloud computing models to build your architecture. That means whatever you want to build, you can go with any of these models depending on your requirement. I can basically host my software as a service as well. I can use platforms services to give me the output. And finally, I can use all of them, that is infrastructure as a service. That means you can directly go for Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, any of these providers. So a lot of companies nowadays are on cloud. Again, not all of these are on AWS, but these are all on cloud. Definitely some kind of cloud. They have their own cloud or they are on someone else's cloud. So basically, this is what is the buzzword. So these are all the companies: popular Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, Ola, Pinterest, Instagram. They all are now deployed on the cloud. Why? Because everybody wants to handle the additional capacity. So again, in on-premises, we have seen that why everybody is running to the cloud, because you want to have additional capacity and you're actually running out of enough capacity. So everybody is actually going to the cloud. That is the reason, because they want to have additional capacity, because they want to offload the task of administration of the server, management of the server. They want to give it completely to someone else. So what all you can do in the cloud? Now, one of you told me that they have used AWS for storage, correct? So not only that, you can actually put a lot of different things in the cloud. You can actually do that in the cloud. What do I mean by that? So basically application hosting. So if you have ever downloaded VLC media player, that is of the link of s3.amazonaws.com slash videolan VLC, something like that. That means the entire application is hosted on the AWS cloud. Then you have backup and storage. So if you have an on-premises data center, you just want to store the backup somewhere. You want to store your data somewhere, you can definitely do it in the cloud. You can store that data in the cloud in AWS as well. Content delivery. So basically, what is content delivery? Your Netflix, Hotstar, what they do, they use that as a streaming platform. The example that I gave you of a CDN or a content delivery network. So why is YouTube very fast, or YouTube streams fast? Because it has a CDN server which will copy the data across to all of the locations in the entire world. So wherever your end users are there, they will quickly be able to access the data. Because of this CDN service, you do not have to go in and provision a server everywhere in the all of the different regions in the world or all the data centers. The CDN will do that for you, so that you can actually reduce the latency to your end users. Then you have websites. So a lot of different popular websites are available on the cloud as well. Enterprise IT, that means any kind of organizational application if you are developing, you can develop that in the cloud. any kind of databases. So may you work on any kind of database like MySQL, MS SQL, Oracle, PostgreSQL. These are all available in the cloud as well. You can configure them, you can use them as per your requirement as well. So now a quite common buzzword is there called as a solutions architect. So who is a solutions architect and what is he doing in AWS, or what is his job role when it comes to AWS? So when it comes to AWS certified solutions architect, it's an individual that will architect and design the information technology solutions and services for organizations. So what do I mean by that? The job role, that is solutions architect, is basically general role which actually deals with a lot of different stuff. So whatever we have learned or whatever we have seen up till now, we have talked about different kinds of computing applications, different kinds of storage, different kinds of services. Connecting all of them together or having a combination of all of them to design an architecture as per your requirement. That means for a content delivery network or for a content streaming platform, you might require different kinds of services. For a website, you might require different services. For an enterprise application, you might require different kinds of services. All of them have to be designed by solutions architect. So he needs to know on how to design these architectures. Again, what are these services that we are talking about? So let me just give you a simple example so that you can actually understand this quite better. So now, to put this in a very simple way, normally you might be familiar of the concept of virtual machines. That means, as I told you, now if I want to run something on my local computer, I can do that as well. But if I want to do it on someone else's data center, in AWS we have a service called as EC2. So EC2 is just the name of the service, that is a virtual machine. You can actually provision your applications or put your applications on EC2 as well. So I can basically put my application on EC2. Now, what does an architect do? So the application might be on EC2, the storage might be on something like Google Drive, similar to Google Drive in AWS. We have a service called as S3. The job role of solutions architect will be to combine these services to give the most efficient solution to the customer. That means combining different kinds of services. These are just two examples. Now for notifications, we have simple notification service that is used to send out push notifications. If anybody wants to host their application via a service like Lambda, like the Alexa speaker. So if you want to develop Alexa skills on that, you can go for that service as well. That means what AWS has done, they have taken a single computer like an EC2 and they have broken that down into different services. So depending on your requirement, you can go for storage, you can go for S3, you can go for databases, you can go for any service that you want. So in a bouquet, you can go for everything on EC2. That means I can provision everything on EC2. But if you don't want that, again, why will you not want that? Because if I'm putting everything on a single server, it can probably crash. It can go with insufficient capacity, or I might not require all of that thing. That means to provision something, I might not require the entire computer. That is where AWS comes into picture. That is why they have created so many different services, and we can leverage that or we can use it to design an architecture any way that we want. Now, what are the prerequisites to become a solutions architect? Now, you need to have good knowledge of operating systems. That means you need to be aware of Windows, Linux operating system. You need to be aware how to connect to it, how to do SH, how to do RDP, or you at least need to know what these terms are there. Then you need to have a familiar understanding of basic networking concepts. That means you need to have an idea on uh, what exactly do you mean by IP addresses? What are networks? What is a LAN network? How is a LAN network built in a very simple way? What are different components in that? You need to be aware about that. Then web servers, you need to have a bit of understanding about what are websites or how does websites work or what are web servers. It would be helpful. Again, I will not say it is compulsory, but it is recommended that you have this knowledge. Again, you need to have some knowledge about the basic IT infrastructure. That means you need to be aware of few basic IT concepts like probably snapshots, backups. You need to be aware of that. Again, not compulsory, but recommended so that you can actually go on the learning of solutions architect associate. Again, you need to have a familiarity between database systems, SQL database systems, NoSQL database systems. You need to have some idea about that. Now, exactly what is Amazon Web Services? Now, this is quite a buzzword for a lot of people still. So, what is Amazon Web Service or AWS? It will actually let your businesses and let your developers use the web services to build scalable, sophisticated applications. Again, what are these web services? So, as I told you, what they have done, they have taken a single computer and broken it down into all of the different components. That means, according to your requirement, you can use any of that and it will let you give the output. That means you can do storage, I can do analytics, I can use development and management. That means I probably use GitHub for that. So similar tools also we have in AWS. You can use it for content delivery, networking, messaging, compute, database, notifications. So I can create all of these services, then I can interlink them together. That is what is learned in the solutions architect associate. So what does the course cover? The course covers understanding of these services and how they are linked together. So AWS is nothing but a cloud provider which will give you access to all of these services in a pay as you go fashion. That means whatever you'll consume, you'll only have to pay for that. So now let's talk a bit about the history of AWS. So what's the history of AWS? So Amazon.com was launched in 1995. So Amazon.com was launched probably as a bookstore earlier. So it was just a bookstore earlier. Then in 2003, they had a vision proposed for on-demand computing infrastructure as web services. In 2006, AWS actually offered IT infrastructure services in the form of web services. That means I can actually go to the cloud. I can actually use S3 for my storage like Google Drive. Similarly, other services like EC2 actually started appearing from 2006. In 2007, they actually started their workforce. That means they actually had a lot of people. So they had about 180,000 developers on AWS. Actually, in 2010, Amazon.com completely moved to AWS. That means they had the entire website, that is the e-commerce website that you see today, completely shifted to Amazon AWS. 2013, AWS was awarded the agency authority to operate under Federal Risk and Authorization Management. In 2015, Gartner, now you might have heard about Gartner. Gartner is nothing but one which gives you ratings of cloud providers. So it shows you what is the percentage that of cloud providers used in the real life in today's world. So AWS estimated that 10 times more infrastructure is deployed in AWS and the combined adoption of the next 14 providers. So AWS is actually the market leader. Even today, AWS is the market leader when it comes to the Gartner quadrant. So Gartner actually publishes something called as a magic quadrant in which they will give you information about the same. So in 2016, they had over 98 AWS services. So as I told you, for compute, storage, database, networking, all of these different categories, they had different kinds of services. And in 2020, they had 200 plus AWS services. Now, one of you actually asked me, why should we prefer AWS over different cloud providers? So AWS actually has been in the business from so long. So from 1995, they have been in the business. Again, AWS is easy to use. That means if you are new to AWS, you can actually get started with it quickly. Now, obviously, when it comes to cost, some people say that Azure is a bit cheaper than AWS. Again, that depends on what kind of solutions you're going for. Now, you will obviously go for the best solution when it comes to all of the criteria. That means your deployment should be easy. At the same time, you should get the flexibility. The customer support should be good. Now, in this front, I would definitely say that AWS has a very active customer support, and AWS offers you a free tier. That means it will give you few services for free also initially going with. So that is something that AWS provides you, and that is why AWS actually recommended. Now, when it comes to other cloud providers, definitely they have the services, they have their own bouquet of services. AWS being in this industry from so long, they have currently about 200 plus AWS services. So you have a wide range of services to choose from. You have a wide portfolio to choose from, and according to your requirement, you can easily design this thing because it is easy to use. So other than other providers, I definitely say that it has good documentation. It is easy to get started with. Now, when it comes to AWS customers, who are the customers on AWS? So there are a lot of different customers on AWS. We have enterprise customers, That means we have a lot of different enterprise customers, a lot of large organizations like Netflix, as I've told you, a lot of like Formula One is they are completely on AWS. So they have a lot of companies are on AWS completely. Then you have the public sector. So in India, in Maharashtra, if you're familiar, a couple of websites like Aple Sarkar is actually completely hosted on AWS. That is the public sector. So government organizations and non-profit can actually start using the cloud. Why? Because they do not have to waste or utilize their money in the data centers and all of that stuff. They can simply start using the cloud as well. Finally, when it comes to startups, a lot of different popular startups are on AWS. Like there is Hotstar, which actually started as a startup initially. They are now on AWS. There is a lot of different startups currently that are on AWS. Why? Because initially you do not have to make a large upfront investment, and according to your requirement, you can change the businesses as well. Now, what are the job roles that are there with AWS? So, learning AWS, how can you go forward, or what are the different job roles that you have? So, solutions architect is a popular job role. That means you can actually design the architectures for companies. You can help them with that. You can also develop your applications on AWS. That means being a software development engineer. You can design the softwares on AWS. You can do that. That means instead of designing an architecture, deploying it like a solutions architect does, you can yourself design it. You can become an entrepreneur. You can actually develop it on AWS directly as well. Then you can become a web development engineer, so you can deploy websites or web applications on AWS. There is a job role called a DevOps engineer, so you can actually design something called as CI/CD pipelines, or you can actually do the automation of infrastructure in AWS. Then there is cloud support associate. That means if you are more oriented towards working with people, you more like to solve their problems, you can actually work as a cloud support associate to solve their problems, to understand what are the problems that they are facing, and you can help your company with that as well. Then there is a data scientist. That means you will work with a lot of large data, and for that you want to do analysis on that data. So for that we have services like Redshift and all of that available in the AWS cloud as well. Then you can do machine learning. Obviously, your machine learning applications, you will not run it on a local computer because they need a very powerful GPU. They will need a powerful processor. That is where AWS comes into picture. You can actually offload it to different services. You can use leverage different AWS services for running your machine learning applications, like probably AWS SageMaker is one example. Then you can host your applications, or you can create your entire applications on the AWS cloud. You can be a developer of applications. You can host them on the cloud as well. Then you can also become a cloud support engineer, so you can actually deal with solving the problems that they are facing. So with a cloud support associate, you can probably understand the problems. With the engineer, you will definitely troubleshoot them yourself. You will solve them yourself. So if you're more interested into actually solving the problems that people are facing directly, you can become a cloud support engineer as well. Now, when it comes to the AWS cloud, just to give you a high level overview, what are the different certifications? Now, one of you actually told me that the cloud practitioner, what's a cloud practitioner? It is a person, or it is a certification to validate fundamental AWS cloud and industry knowledge. Again, I would, from my personal experience, I would recommend for those already familiar about basic IT concepts, do not go for cloud practitioner. That means if you're more oriented towards technical role, I would not suggest cloud practitioner. But if you're entirely new to AWS, you are entirely new to the IT world, entirely unfamiliar with the basic IT concepts, then the cloud practitioner is one for you to go. So other than that, I would suggest, or my recommendation for you would be to go for the solutions architect associate, because that job role or that certification will actually help you learn about the different length and breadth of AWS services, and teach about how to design and develop architectures on the AWS cloud. Now, if you're a developer and you are looking at it more from a developer perspective, use the terminal more often, you are more from a programming background, I would suggest you go for the developer associate. Again, the developer associate will overlap somewhere with the solutions architect. It will consider that services, but it is more focused on the developing part. That means it will more focus on your CI/CD pipelines or any of that. It will more focus on the development based things. It is recommended that you have some programming experience when you go to developer. Then if you're a guy who is more interested in networking, that means you are more into the networking portfolio, I would suggest that you go for the SysOps Administrator Associate. That means the SysOps Administrator Associate will delve more into networking or deep with monitoring concepts. It will basically quiz you on monitoring or auditing on that kind of concepts. Now, when it comes to my personal opinion, as a beginner, I would suggest that you go with Solutions Architect Associate rather than the both SysOps and Developer, because they are more focused towards the specific area. To begin with, Solutions Architect would give you a good information. It will give you more information about the different kinds of services, the length and breadth of them, and you can actually start learning these services. You can prepare for the certification as well. So that is where sysops and developer actually overlap. That is why I told I could recommend solutions. But again, if you are more focused, or if you're more focused on the developer part only, you want to learn only that, then you can go for a developer associate. Definitely it's an associate level, so it does not require a lot of background knowledge. You can actually get started with it as well. Then once you have enough experience on these things, you can actually go for the professional level, that is the solutions architect professional level. My experience would be at least spend more time architecture or more time working on real life projects before you go to the professional exam. Now in currently today's scenario, you can sit for any of these exams. That means AWS has removed the dependency. You can just go in and apply for any exam. But from my personal experience, once you have good hands-on experience on AWS on these services, then only go for the solutions architect professional, which is a professional level exam or professional level certification. Now, when it comes to DevOps engineer is more of the same thing of developer. Basically, it is a high level overview of developer based services. It will quiz you more on that. Then we also have the specialty level exams. That is networking specialty, big data specialty, security, machine learning, and Alexa skill builder. The name itself give you information. If you are uh, working in that domain only, you only want to have that domain. Like one of you actually told me that they are working in the big data domain. Now, if you already have a good hands-on experience of the basic services, if you already have a associate level certification, I would recommend that then you can go for the big data specialty. So my personal recommendation would be still to go do an associate first, then do the specialty one. Now, when it comes to costing, cloud practitioner will cost you about 100 US dollars, whereas the architect levels will cost you 150 US dollars. The professional and the specialty will each cost you 300 US dollars. So you need to ensure that you are aware of the costing before you try to sit for the exam. So there are a lot of different companies on AWS as well. That means there are a lot of startups now available on AWS. So there is LinkedIn, there is Pinterest, Instagram. So a lot of companies means what? A lot of different job opportunities, or definitely you can work as an entrepreneur. So learning all of these, you can actually go in and work as an entrepreneur as well. What is a real world scenario? Netflix is a company which actually leverages cloud computing. So they actually use AWS. That means they want to serve the videos to so many users across the entire world. That is where they will come into picture. That is where they use AWS for that, so that they can actually stream the video smoothly to all of the users. Now, whenever I watch Netflix, I've never seen it buffering apart from my internet connection. Why? Because the service is always stable from their perspective. So in the same way, that is a lot of different companies are using cloud providers. Why? Because they want to leverage their infrastructure. What's the course coverage for the solutions architect associate? What all stuff you need to actually know about? We'll take a quick look at that. So you need to have some idea about the AWS global infrastructure. That means you need to know the global infra in depth. You need to know about the core AWS services. That means you need to have an idea about AWS core services. Then you need to have hands-on experience for compute, storage, networking, and database. And you also need to know the role of AWS services in IT architectures. So how does AWS fits into different types of IT architectures? You need to have an idea about that. What are the recommended best practices that you need to know? So again, very important. This is for the exam as well, and this is for real world outside. I have seen that in a lot of migration projects. That means people do not go with best practices. So whatever projects I've worked on, I've seen that people actually do not go with best practices. So I would recommend that you actually learn this. That is also covered in the course. We will actually go with recommended best practices as well. Securing architectures. So how do you secure architectures? How do you build out the most safest architecture so that it is not vulnerable? That is also covered in the course. And finally, exam readiness. So basically, from the exam perspective, what all things you need to know, how you need to know how to break down the questions, how to understand that. That is covered in the exam readiness part of the course as well. So talking about the solutions architect associate exam, it's an exam with multiple choice, multiple answers. There are 65 exam questions in the course, available in the course, about 35 easy ones, 15 with medium difficulty, and there are 15 difficult questions with complex scenarios as well. There is no negative marking involved. The duration of the exam is 130 tweets. Sorry, 130 minutes. So basically, the exam will run for a length of 130 minutes. It is available in English, Japanese, Korean, and simplified Chinese. It's a MCQ exam. You just have to sit in front of a computer. Currently, in today's COVID situation, you can give it online as well. Additional 30 minutes also you get for people who have English as a second language. So that is pretty much about the exam. Few of the exam benefits. So first of all, you get a wide range of job opportunities after the exam. So that means once you're a certified solutions architect associate, you get a wide range of job opportunities. You get an AWS certificate and badge from officially from Amazon. So you will get a certificate and you'll also get a badge which you can actually display on your LinkedIn on different kinds of websites. You get recognition in AWS events. So in AWS events, you basically will have a booth for you, for especially for certified people, in which you basically can connect with other people. You can do networking. You can actually talk with them, talk about the
Shiva,
different
can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
How long is the certification validity, like the certificate validity?
it is for 3 years.
Okay.
You also, one more benefit is that after you give one of the exams, you'll get a 50% discount code for any AWS exam on passing. That means once you pass any of the exams, you actually get a 50% discount code on the next exam, may it whatever be in AWS as well.
Okay.
And you also get one AWS practice exam voucher. So basically, AWS has practice exams as well. For the different kinds of exams that we have taken a look at, you get a practice exam voucher once you clear one exam as well.